My My name is Michelle Thurs. Welcome to day 2 of the conference Projects and Platforms, Exploring the Culture of NFTs. Today, we'll be discussing platforms and how they might form a new culture for art and artists. This project is created at the Center of New Art at William Patterson University and supported by the Office of Academic Affairs. It is also supported by Cadena with partners from Battery Journal, Gardenship Studios, and Sculpture Magazine. At this conference, we strive to promote gender equality. We are inclusive and open to all participants, regardless of socioeconomic position, gender, sexual orientation, race, or creed. We seek to support mental health and transcend borders and political positions. Now a little about me. I am an independent curator and producer, and I consult and manage private collections. Additionally, I am an art professional who works in valuation. My curatorial practice started in 1999 while co-founding and directing Moving Image Gallery in New York. This was a unique space that lived fluidly between virtual and physical platforms, hosting a broad network of artists. Also, this was one of the first galleries dedicated to moving image, exploring technology, and the arts. Through exhibition and panels, we created early conversations that are still relevant today. From 2001 to date, I continued this dialogue as an independent curator. I produced a series of exhibitions locally, regionally, and internationally, inside and outside the institution and online, with projects in New York, throughout the United States, and internationally in Turkey, France, England, China, and India. I use curatorial practice as an educational tool and a network facilitator. It has allowed for an ongoing conversation with a broad community of artists, curators, organizations, and institutions to explore the effects of technology on contemporary art and its market. I see this panel series, Projects and Platforms, Exploring the Culture of NFTs, as an extension of my curatorial practice, selecting a diverse group of art professionals to give multi-perspectives on how NFTs might function in the context of contemporary fine arts, discourse, and beyond. Over the last 6 months, Reece and I have developed this conversation amid the NFT storm. With the fall of the market and the ongoing extension of the landscape, we asked each other and our panelists how their practice and missions might evolve in the post-NFT world. It is a pleasure to introduce the participants, Sophia Garcia, Jennifer and Kevin Mccoy, and Nadia Teja, each pioneering a path to create community in producing, presenting, and cultivating this dynamic culture. Sophia Garcia is a curator, advisor, and community builder. She has been honored with awards as the founder of ArtX Code, a generative art house, and currently sits on the curation board for Art Blocks. Previously, she worked at Onyx by JP Morgan, as a blockchain technical design strategist, and as director of education of Code and Art, a nonprofit focused on teaching young girls how to make art with code. Jennifer and Kevin Mccoy are New York-based digital media artists whose works extend from film to video to installation and generative software. Recently, the works include generative software that uses blockchain technology to create long-term ecosystems for images to live and die and evolve. In 2014, artist Kevin Mccoy minted the world's first digital art NFT. He is also the co-founder of the blockchain company Monograph. Postmaster Gallery in New York City represents the McCoys. Nadia Teja is the executive and curatorial director of Snark Art, OG Art, and is a digital consultant. Snark Art is one of the first pioneers in the NFT market. Since 2018, they've experimented with blockchain technology as a revolutionary interactive medium, And under Teja's direction and curatorial guidance, the company pushes the boundaries of artistic concepts and technology, expanding the definition of contemporary art with a new genre. We'll begin the platform conversation with Sophia Garcia of Art X Code, followed by Jennifer and Kevin Mccoy and Nadia Teja. There will be a discussion and opportunity for people to comment and question via YouTube Live. Now we welcome Sophia Garcia. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just have to say also, it's an honor to be speaking with everyone here. The McCoys, I'm such a fan. Nadia, I've collected Snark art since the very beginning. I have a pixel of East Sussman, so this is so cool. I am going to quickly share my screen and we can kind of get started and I can tell you a little bit more about Art X Code. So I'm Sophia Garcia, the founder of Art X Code. We're really just dedicated to supporting the algorithmic arts through exhibitions, special projects, and private sales. We work with a wide range of artists from up and coming to some of the leading in the space and support them throughout their journey, as well as advising different companies, institutions, and collectors. So we actually have quite humble beginnings. Started off as an Instagram account, and it was a hobby. It was really a place to showcase what artists were doing. This is one of my first processing tutorials and really just trying to create, find out who else was doing this. And this was the summer of 2016. Around that time, I was teaching Code Art, the nonprofit that Michelle mentioned in the beginning. Shortly after, I started to get a lot more traction, finding more and more artists. And, I was showcasing a lot of this work and decided to, after going to an event in 2018, to showcase some of these works, to really start to create the conversation around what was happening with algorithmic art. So in 2019, the Contemporary Digital Art Fair in New York was launched, and I showcased the work of Dimitri Cherniak and Tyler Hobbs. This was one of the first, first moments I decided to showcase work, and we sold everything. And at that moment, it was no longer a hobby, but something that I could actually do. And I found myself being an art dealer at this point, which was rather interesting. And also our first foray into NFTs. So at this point, we had everything was a print with code printed out to really tie this together. And we decided to experiment with NFTs at this moment. And it really was an experiment for us. And throughout the year, we did more exhibitions, and we were really looking at NFTs as certificate of authenticity for more physical works. All of these physical works were NFTs, were generative artwork or AI-based work. And it was really exciting time. Then enter 2020, and this is where things really shifted for Art X Code's practice and how we kind of worked around the pandemic. So we had the work of Harshit Agarwal. We were going to showcase his work in Paris, and shortly after realized that was no longer going to happen. The fair ended up switching over to an online platform, and it didn't really work out for us. So we decided to experiment with NFTs, and to really just do a full-on release of something in this capacity. And it was amazing. We ended up seeing that artists, the collectors, did not care whether or not there was a physical counterpart to it, and it really switched up our programming and how we engaged with artists. So later that year, we collaborated with Times Square, and they did a digital gallery show where we curated a selection of generative artwork. And it was a really exciting time. And we continued on with this, working with more artists in the algorithmic art space, AI space, and really trying to push the narrative forward for people who didn't really understand. I think engaging in social media and trying to connect with more and more people as much as possible. And I think what we really specialize in is bringing in up and coming artists and connecting them with collectors. Oh. Sorry. So introducing art blocks. When the art blocks entered the scene in 2021, that absolutely changed everything. Artists that I had been working with were now becoming everyday names in the NFT community, and we found ourselves trying to figure out how can we support these artists. So Dmitry Cherniak being one of them, he is one of the artists we've been working with the longest, and shortly after it became really clear that collectors wanted prints. And so one of the ways that we've been supporting generative artists on art block specifically is helping them with their prints on the outside, but also offering a lot of critiques and helping them throughout the entire process as a help to art blocks. We work with artists in the pipeline. We try to find more diverse artists that can start engaging with them, while also, trying to get them into setting the stage for how their work might work in the physical space. I think that's always something that we're very interested in. So in December of 2021, during Art Basel, we organized a show called The Digital. And during this time, we had seen all of the different auction houses, all these people kind of rush to show NFT work, and we're fundamentally doing a really big disservice to how they were going about that. And so one of the things that we strive to do is elevate the way in which we experience this work. And so we went above and beyond to put on a museum quality show in the heart of Miami Beach during Art Basel. And we were extremely successful in doing that. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And here you can see the works of Casey Reece. We have the Squiggles, Snowfro, Ringers, all of these works that for the longest time, really, we had just been seeing online. And we always got the question, how am I supposed to collect this artwork? What does it look like to have this on my wall? Why are people spending money on these artworks? What's the big deal? And so what we really wanted to do was show, not tell, just show you. Come experience this artwork, see how beautiful it is, check out the detail, and you will absolutely understand. This year in 2020, we also had the opportunity to work with Sotheby's, and they did a show on generative art, covering generative art. We handled all of the production for the show, making sure that, and we're co-curators with the Spalters. And it was a really special moment to really bring in, tell the story of generative art to the public. And again, just make sure that people understand that this practice has an extremely rich history. Next for me and for Artix Code is we're really looking to create our own space in the NFT world where we don't have to rely on third-party NFT platforms, and really have a space for high quality artworks and quality NFTs. I think Monograph, you guys do an amazing job of having that. We use Monograph for some of the pioneers in the Sotheby's show, like Charles Surrey and I believe Roman Verosco. So things like that, and taking a look at institutional grade quality NFTs is of the utmost importance, and something we're definitely looking forward to in the time to come. So thank you so much. I'm Sophia, and if you need to reach me, this is where you can find me.
Thank you, Sophia. Next will be Jennifer and Kevin Mccoy.
Hello, and thank you so much for having us as part of this platform panel. Yes, it's a real honor to be here with the rest of you, and thanks especially to Michelle and Michael for getting us involved in this. I will just start by saying we have been, longtime digital artists, and a lot of the work we're doing now, either in or out of NFTs, relies on our long history with what we used to like to call electronic arts. And so some of the work you see behind you, we've been, more or less, New York studio artists for the better part of our careers, working with installation and performance, and, and the moving image has been a crucial part of our practice. Kevin and his research into blockchain technology is kind of the newest chapter. So I'll let him kind of talk about that history and you know, I know the panel is organized around this idea of a platform. And, you know, I think some of the thinking around, you know, what is a platform? What can it do for artists? How does it help? How does it hinder is a really interesting point of, you know, of discussion.
Yeah, and let me pull up some browser windows here to kind of share some stuff with you. So the you know, as Jim was saying, you know, we've been making work for a long time and in many different forms, all in this kind of rubric of art and technology. I mean, you know, the label has changed as the years have gone by. You know, electronic art, digital art, new media art, you know, kind of on and on and on. You know, and if you know kind of go through our website, there's many different kinds of works. You know, all kinds of different things. You know, and just to kind of like click through a few kind of things. You know, from the deep archives. You know, we've done these video works. You know, this is an early video work. This is an early net art piece. Oh, this keeps quitting on me, so I have to kind of keep restarting it. An early net art piece, 1999, that the digital art organization Rhizome just did a great remaster of, and brought this old work back to life. This Air World piece. But you know, this project, just to spend a second or two on this on this project, once this lovely emulator, which is so cool, gets going. You know, this project is kind of characteristic of the way that we were, you know, have been thinking about technology in a creative way all along, and sort of a middle ground between studio practice and platforms, and kind of thinking about creative systems and how to engage with those systems. And so this early internet art project started off as thinking about banner ads and creating these banner ads and working with early digital advertising platforms to circulate these images as a launching point, you know, so this kind of like a ad, you know, monetized network, you know, already happening there, and then that led to this, you know, to this project that this website that had a lot of different kind of software components, a bunch of different, you know, kind of elements going on, you know, back in the kind of early days of internet art. And I know that you know, there's Michelle knows this work quite well. We were, you know, it was such a kind of small and wonderful community at that point, you know, kind of very much like the NFT community was sort of, say, 2019, really this kind of small, really nice community. You know, and then sometimes these projects, like here's a project that we did at the Whitney, again, really early back in the days, thinking about how digital art could fit into the context of institutions. And so the Whitney has this whole archive of artists making browser-based works. This is a project called 2001.txt that takes a shot-by-shot description of the film 2001: A Space Odyssey and creates these kind of crawling text descriptors, little kind of encapsulations of that, you know, of that work. You know, other projects at the time that we did that were, you know, kind of in kind of wide circulation. This shot, every episode that comprises these shot-by-shot databases of different TV shows that were collected and archived in these discs that you know, with these players. You know, and so this idea of encapsulation of how to take this kind of media archive and wrap it and make it into these little units that were both kind of meaning units, semantic units, but also physical, kind of tangible units. And again, other work from this era, a whole bodies of work that was around miniatures and cinematic miniatures, creating these sculptural tabletop works that drew from the history of cinema in different ways and used live miniature cameras and a computer-controlled editing system to cut these views from these sculptures together onto a video screen to make these kind of real-time primitive films. You know, so again, kind of just examples of the kinds of things that we were doing, really thinking about networks and how they intersect with earlier forms like cinema, like narrative, and things like that. And that was really our work for a long time. You know, doing a lot of different kinds of things, and that set the stage for kind of my early 2000s, early 2010s obsessions with blockchain-based technologies.
And just before he launches into that, just to draw a circle around all of that, I mean, I feel like all of these projects were about kind of, putting the lightning in a bottle in a way, so that, we all understood that the electronic signal was something that artists were contending with as art material. And then soon we all understood that that signal was going to be digitized, and that more and more parts of our life were going to rely on, digital networks. But in terms of the gallery artist, it was necessary to create form with that, like to find, not to say that this entire sculpture is a wrapper, but this entire sculpture is a wrapper for, the conceptual idea of time, how time is experienced by the viewer. So in this case, it's got a sculptural physical time, that's compared to what a projection would be, what kind of projection is happening in the space in a live way. And so I just, this NFT thing that seems to have come from nowhere from so many different journalists talking about it, is sort of deeply embedded with, many of the artists that Postmasters was working with and continues to work with, who are finding form for conceptual ideas that have to do with electronic transmission. So then we'll lead to what Kevin was, I'm sure what he's going to say next.
My story with blockchain starts with Bitcoin, and really, falling in love with it in 2012 and into 2013, and just really kind of trying to get my mind around that form, what Satoshi created with that. And this idea of scarcity and uniqueness and kind of a property model, digital property within a context of something that is infinitely reproducible and infinitely spreadable and copyable, via the blockchain. Everyone has the blockchain, but yet I still have my thing, you still have your thing. And just trying to understand how that worked and what it was. And so for me, that was clear idea for me in 2013, the fall of 2013, thinking that was something that digital artists could use, because digital artists, either made sculptural works, either took their technical ideas and turned it into sculpture or prints, or they did websites that were part of institutions. So that was kind of the only form of support. It's either going to be institutional support where it can stay digital, or it's going to go into a physical form, a sculptural form, where it could go into participate in a market. And those were kind of the two options. And so when I kind of got my mind around Bitcoin, it was clear that there could be a different way. There could be a way for a digital artist to work digitally, keep it digitally in a digitally native form, but still create a market structure for that work. And so that was an idea that came to fruition ultimately in the spring of 2014 at this event called 7 on 7 at the New Museum in New York, hosted by Rhizome. And so there's a great video of that kind of tells this whole story. And this is myself and Anil Dash, introducing the concept of what's now called an NFT, how a blockchain could be used as a system of record keeping to create a metadata record that's tradable and unique and transferable, and using that as a form of provenance and ownership for digital work, for digital art. And so, in the course of this, I, made several pieces, to kind of demonstrate this, illustrate that. One of them is quantum, and then which doesn't appear in this video for funny reasons, and then two others. But the thing that's also important about this is it wasn't just the fact of making that blockchain record, that kind of first NFT, or making that NFT. It really was in introducing the idea to the public, trying to explain people what this form of digital ownership was and what it represented, but also creating a tool that people could use to try it themselves. So it was from the beginning, not just stuff that I was doing and showing to people, but it was a kind of public explanation and a public invitation to try this out. So here, it's like enabling a market for digital art is the screen here, and we had this very simple, very primitive tool that let people do that. And then so eventually that became a standalone platform, and it was called Monograph. And so Monograph then kind of lived on for a number of years in this, in this mode. It eventually died. We ran out of money. No one understood what we were talking about. The market just wasn't there. But we got to a pretty cool point. And so this is kind of an example. This is from a project we did with the Whitney Museum called Public Key, Private Key. But it kind of shows you the interface. This is a kind of editioned work, and it shows kind of the owners. And this is kind of a surviving fragment of what that platform looked like. And it was really cool. It was really great. I was really proud of it. It had all the features that we see in marketplaces today, but back in 2015, 2016. But it was good. But just to talk a little bit about kind of current ideas and current projects, that are kind of maybe at the intersection of platform, tool, and artwork. We wanted to talk about a couple of recent things. So this is Quantum. This is the animation that was the first work that I created a blockchain record for. Kind of the inaugural NFT. And Sophia, I was happy to see your thing from 2016 about processing. Because I wrote this animation in processing, and that's really, there's such an important tool and such an important history of that tool of digital artists using that, kind of working with code and using that tool. It's really central to the whole practice for a lot of people. And this was created with processing. But we then made last year and this year some new projects that we felt were kind of like, pointing the way towards another kind of to the future, kind of pointing kind of in kind of the next direction of works. And the first one of that is called Quantum Leap. Do you want to talk about Quantum Leap?
Oh, sure. So Quantum Leap is a kind of each token has 3 years in which it morphs through 20 different phases, and it generates new artworks as it goes. Whenever you find a black and white version, a kind of a kind of corpse state that keeps that doesn't evolve. So there's one evolutionary token that a person could collect, and then there's all these spin-offs that get generated through the life cycle of the project. And so the idea is, using blockchain to kind of keep time and to think about, an expanding idea of of a moving image, something that every time you check in on your wallet, new things have happened and it becomes alive in a way that that we wanted to see happen. So this is just a website illustrating some of the different ways that it can look as it resolves. And then the newest project is Quantum Entanglement, which creates this sort of idea of creating this live design. And then we also take that same code and print it on this custom built drawing machine that Kevin hacked together during the pandemic. So it creates both an animation and it creates a digital form, a printed form of itself. And that you can see a little bit here in this final image where some of the logic of the way the drawing machine works can be captured with animated code.
Yeah, we like this with this work. We like this idea of the artwork being essentially this kind of abstract set of information, this kind of set of points in this case, and that data file, that data can go into these two different directions. It can be stay in a digital state. And so here, this is kind of showing this kind of animation of these drawing strokes happening within a digital environment, or it can be fed into a machine that manually draws it out in this very large format plotter that I created, and it creates this kind of digital work. And so it kind of spans this gap between a purely digital space and a physical space, and allows people to kind of make that bridge and in a sense to kind of choose which way they want to go, be it kind of physical or or digital, and kind of operate between these two different realms. So yeah, that's
yeah, we could stop there. Just to say too that Monograph is, the original version is, was Bitcoin based and, not extant. But there is, new action happening with Monograph that Kevin could talk about in the conversation.
Yeah, with the whole, re-emergence of, or not emergence, but the whole popularization of NFTs, the platform got kind of returned by popular demand, and we were ended up helping people. We weren't running our own system anymore, but it was much more about kind of building things for other people. And so we made a really nice kind of museum quality minting tool that's been used by a number of artists, different auction houses, to mint stuff, with kind of full archival information and with an eye towards permanence and archiving from a museumological sense. And then also we've built a bunch of different marketplaces for people, ArtNet, Artsy, things like that, where they're selling their own NFTs. There's a lot of people that are, of course, interested in that. So it's kind of brought back, kind of by popular demand. And I'm not, the first time around, it was painful and hard, and I'm not a business person so much, building and running a business. So this time, my partners are doing that more, and I can chime in. It's much better this time. Feels much better this time. Okay, so we'll stop there.
Great. Next is Nadia Teja. Hi.
Hi, you hear me well, I hope. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Michael, for inviting me in such an inspiring conversation and such a great company of the artists and innovators that just, I believe, like Snark.org, also aim to create the project that will remain in the art history. So I just would like to keep this big mission ahead, because this is what Snark.org has been doing since 2017, 2018. Let me share my screen right now. Okay. Is it okay? Good. All right. Do you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. So as I said, as many of my colleagues here, we have started in its origins of NFTs when they were not even such a word, NFT. So as we also, like Kevin and Jennifer mentioned, we called it blockchain art or token, or I don't know, like it was any kind of word that we came up with to inspire artists and some partners that were skeptical at that time to experiment and this blockchain, because not so many people believed that is going to be such a trend and artistic tool for the innovation. And so we have started 2017 and the end of 2017, 2018, and experimented, took a blockchain technology as a revolutionary interactive art medium, and together with artists, we explore, dream, and innovate, and push the boundaries of blockchain technology, hoping to create something new. And I'd like to kind of dive a little bit deep in the history of Snark, why it's called Snark. We very often ask this question, why you called Snark such a strange name? Actually, we were inspired by the Lewis Carroll poem, The Hunting of the Snark. And there is a second title of this poem that is The Impossible Voyage of an Improbable Crew to Find an Inconceivable Creature. So this is very much explains what we have been doing since we launched the company. where is inconceivable creature is a new form of art or new genre of art that we are looking for. And of course, like blockchain technology, blockchain solves the most fundamental barrier for the digital art adoption that many digital artists were looking for desperately for many years. It's like ownership and provenance. But for us, it was not just enough. It didn't sound like that's it. Oh, my light fell down. Sorry. So, and we just believe that blockchain can meaningfully transform art and also can advance crypto to approach a more just decentralized and creative world. So not just that, but something else. And following this adventure, since our launch of the company, we experimented created all kinds of artistic experiments, from fractional ownership to sonic projects to performance. We experimented with artificial intelligence and anonymous poets, some like trained computer to predict some it was like in political situation of a Trump election that time. And we collaborated with prominent artists such as Eve Sussman, Tommy Hartung, Castles, Sarah Baker Khalil, Michael Jew, who was in this panel discussion yesterday, I believe, right? And he probably dived deeper into one of our projects that I will also say a couple of words later. And we collaborated with, created some exhibitions with the Hermitage Museum and some other institutions, and established a crypto community of more than 60,000 people around the projects. So I would like to briefly just bring your attention to our two projects, the first one and the latest one. So the first project that Sophia, thanks to you, mentioned, that is a fractional ownership. It's a project by Eve Sussman, 89 Seconds Atomized, that we consider as an iconic project for us and as well for the blockchain art. It was the artwork is based on artwork by Eve Sussman, 89 Seconds at Alcazar, that is in collection of MoMA and Whitney Museum. And artist had her latest artist proof copy, the last artist proof copy, and we created a blockchain edition out of that. So we shuttered fractioned the artwork in 2,304 atoms. We didn't call it NFT back, we didn't know that term, so we called it atoms, and offered it to the market for $100 each token. That was 20 by 20 pixels, full length video of 99 minutes, and with sound as well. But this one token gave people a possibility. It's like two ways of interactivity: decentralized and centralized interactivity, we called, when you can open or close and access to your piece that you own in your crypto wallet. And also owning just one piece, you could schedule a public or private screening of the museum quality video and film. And in this case, we look at this project not just as the project of fractional ownership, but more as the possibility for community of the collectors to have an artwork and also engage with that through blockchain. it's like was more interactive piece to engage with other community owners. So, and I could show, do you want me to show the video, Michelle, or I could just, what do you think? Is it just to understand how it works?
Sure, you could show
Yeah.
a little bit of this video.
All right. So the video comes together when it's scheduled. So for the artist, from the artist's point of view, this blockchain copy opened also a very kind of like a new layer of her conceptual approach that she initially practiced. It was the, oops, no, I lost. It was also the, so I'm lost, no, sorry. Oh. It was also the way to give the rights to community to decide how her artwork should be presented and how the artwork can, what is the cycle of artwork will be. It can live or die. So because every time it's shown, it was different. And since we were experimenting, following our experiments, we witnessed a few waves of change in the crypto space that is always happened when there is a new medium appears. It is first used as an old medium. It's just happened like this. It was like this television for many. That was a farm. That was a time when television considered as a radio with pictures, and mostly the content mimicked familiar formats borrowed wholesale from the radio and the stage. And it takes some time for the market to start to use a new medium in a new way and recognize a true potential of the medium. So we believe that it's exactly what happened with NFTs, because initially they were considered mostly like suffered and considered mostly as the similar way of to present physical form of art, just a kind of like to channeling it into blockchain. But later, yes, okay. So, and initially it was like mostly JPEGs and files. I picked up a very random images from different platforms here, just to show static images that pretty much like known in NFT world and traditional art world. And then the next wave, and now very much currently evolving trend, is interactivity through generative and dynamic NFTs. And Sophia and Kevin and Jennifer, they mentioned the importance of generative art, and I feature here art blogs that I'm also a big fan of. We like what art blogs does, and of course Arcs Code by Sophia is an amazing platform as well for generative art. And we believe that generative art gives a new perspective on what actually, how blockchain could could develop, like could bring art on the next stage, next step of development. And so we launched last year the project that called Organic Growth Crystal Reef by Michael Ju and Daniil Krivoruchko. I'm sure Michael Ju yesterday focused on this project pretty well, like detailed. So I would not explain it in details. I would just say that with this project, we actually kind of like believe that it's a next step to the new form of art that brings together conceptual part of the art and brings blockchain technology possibilities and new layers, and as well as gaming that is not much was used before, like gaming in the past. So we realized with this project that is with this mechanics, what we call dynamic NFTs, that visually the artworks change every time after the purchase, and it can live and breathe an entire time, or it can be locked at some point depending on the idea of the artist or co-creators. And more interestingly, that this we consider that it also gives an interactive element and collaborative approach, because it can bring the collaboration with existing collections and existing artworks already, just signifying they and transforming the visuals into the new appearance and new relation with dynamic NFTs. And as well, it can be very personal and personalized, give a personalized touch to the NFT, involving collectors and community as a co-creators. So for the OG.art project, we consider Michael Ju and Daniil Krivoruchko as the authors, the main creators, and 6,900 crypto wallets as the co-creators. So of the Big Reef. And since then, so what next? We, driven by this success of OG crystals, we just, actually today is the big day for us. We announced the launch of dynamic NFT platform, OG.art. It's announced today, and we are inviting generative artists and digital artists to experiment with this medium, with this technology with us. So this is next, and I'd like to thank you, all of you here, and would like to also say that all those developments in blockchain space were able to happen because of digital artists that were seeking for the new form and they place in the art scene. And so the revolution and evolution happened in this way. And because it's digital and thanks to blockchain technology, art gets a little closer to the people, which is always great approach. So I think it's a big win of digital art in our time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Such a broad, there's a lot of information to digest. And I think that how I'd like to start the conversation maybe is going back to Kevin in the development of the NFT, the digital art NFT, and ask a question of practicality. As Nadia said, the digital artist was trying to find, was using the NFT as a way to maybe validate and or show authenticity, provenance, as a way to sell their art in a non-digital platform, say the gallery. So when you create the NFT, were you thinking in that way, more the practical way of related to your art practice? Or were you thinking about it, and then at the same time, were you thinking about it as a medium, like the evolution of a medium of blockchain, how to use the blockchain as a medium?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that at that time, there was so little knowledge about any aspect of it, so to even kind of explain what the distributed ledger technology is and how it works in some way and why it matters was the task at hand. And of course it didn't call it NFTs, called it monographs. And it wasn't so much a technical innovation or technical invention as it was a social model. Of course, any blockchain system has technical components and cryptographic proofs that kind of validate the transactions. All those things are real and actual. But the movement of those units in a larger sense, and especially in the context of art, where now we're attaching it to some outside phenomenon, some kind of outside thing, right? It's a metadata record that is put on chain and interacted with, transacted with, right? That has to be believable, has to have social believability. People have to kind of accept it as a thing, right? So separate from the cryptographic exchange and proof attached to it, And so I was thinking about it, in that context, what is this thing? And then the hope was it did establish kind of provenance, and there was something unique that was held back that could be exchanged, And so that was much more of the thought at that time, rather than it as specifically its own expressive form. That said, I mean, our career has always been about interacting with those things and with these different forms and systems and engaging with them expressively and creatively. So that I think the very fact that I was there thinking about those things meant that I was wondering about the creative possibilities of blockchain. But the kind of pitch and the appearance of that of that tool, the story of that idea and that tool was practical.
Okay. Also, just going a little bit further with this about the use of the idea of community as a part of generative practice and also education. Let's go to like the newer work, say, of the generative image that is created out of the wallet, like the collection of the wallet. You had mentioned about a new work that you're using, and that's very across the board. When we go to, I'll go to Snark art and the fractional way of collecting or making art uses this kind of generative quality of public information, of how kind of like the portrait of the collector maybe, and also the kind of memory of transaction, So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And then also this idea, and I know it's a lot, but also this idea of the drawing machine, in which also kind of addresses this idea of adapting, having a machine or a situation that can adapt the work to fit specifically to the platform.
Yeah.
So, you have the animation that can fit specifically to the digital platform or the extended landscape or whatever. And then you have the drawing that could also fit into the physical space. But at the same time, now with the development of the NFT and that makes the drawing could be a digital object or digital object, yes, that could also be in the extended landscape. I'm saying extended landscape because I'm thinking about like a web, 3.0 or internet 3D or metaverse.
No,
So,
I mean, it's really interesting. I feel like the thing that is in its infancy to me is wallets.
Mhm.
Like the way that we all have our individual media, as you see, like people watching full on 35 millimeter cinema on their phone.
Mhm.
They're still thinking about collections in this, very sort of physical based way. And I just think that wallets are going to be that's where I think the innovation, that's where I'd like to see it. Like how does your wallet that you can access become your, a place that has the works that you own that are showable and, functional and updatable. I feel like wallet-based games, wallet-based social games, social games, all these kinds of things I think are really just not there yet, and I think they'll be there soon.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, Quantum Leap, that project, architecturally works very similarly to how Art Blocks works, in the sense that there's some code somewhere, that's running in an execution environment, typically a browser. So it's net art almost in a classic sense, of people in the 90s and aughts, kind of making special websites where the website was the artwork, produced the artwork. And so Art Blocks and Quantum Leap work that same way. There's some sort of code, execution code that's running in a web browser. But with the new twist is that there's a Connect Wallet type of feature, and that code is, trained to look into that wallet and respond to the contents there in a certain way, right? So, in the case of Quantum Leap, there's unique parameters that are encoded into each separate token that the software reads and interprets to deliver you your version of the work. And at a technical level, Art Blocks does that as well in its own approach.
Right.
So it's that wallet is the critical function, and just to kind of extend what Jen's saying, that wallet is so important because in a blockchain-based system, if any kind of interaction model is based on a transaction, right? You have to make a transaction in some form. Some action has to occur. Some transaction has to be sent, and so that mode of interaction is just very cumbersome and very kind of financial, very kind of payment-like, and not very art-like, or engaged or immersive or supple kind of interaction with an artwork, which is, the much more about how we think about artworks.
Right.
That wallet environment in a native blockchain world, that wallet environment needs to be pretty different than how it looks right now.
Okay, so speaking on the wallet, and that's really talking about the purchasing of artwork, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the generating versus generative art. Maybe Sophia, we could talk a little bit about how you're thinking about presenting generative art in this context of creative coding, algorithmic art, and the structure in which, what are the parameters? Do you work with the artists? Do the artists provide the parameters, or do they just provide a certain code that generates without the artist's hand? Say hand as the artist curating the composition. Is it just generative, like a piece of code that's generating this work made by an artist? And then what are the how does it relate to editions, and also the printing of the work? Do the owners or the collectors own that? Do they have to own the code? Also, another part of the question would be, so let's start with that. Yeah, let's just start with how you see generative art, and also maybe talk to the educational component of your advising.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few threads going on here, but I think when we think about generative art, and specifically computer generative art, algorithmic art. The way in which it's working now is very different from, I think, how we think about algorithmic art of the past. So when you look at the pioneers, back in the 60s, they would write their code and they would produce one single output. And at that point, they had no, they had no graphical interfaces. They were using plotters to produce those visual artworks. Then we start seeing the onset of computers, graphic interfaces, and also the accessibility of programming in general. And so now we have people sharing their artwork online, being very specific about which works from the algorithm they are going to release and what they're going to show to the public. And now with the onset of the blockchain, and specifically on-chain generative art, the way that we see it, the process is very different. The artists are uploading their algorithm, but it's up to the community or the collector to evoke that algorithm. And so there is a collaboration now happening between the artist and the collector to actually produce the artwork. And so should a collector decide that they want to purchase it, they have to press mint or purchase, and that action is a variable in the artwork and affects what they're going to see in the end result. Right now, there are some artists that, some people are referring to this as long form generative art, and this idea of, upwards of 1,000 artworks, completely uncurated. No one knows what they're going to get. The artist doesn't know what's going to come out. The collector doesn't know what's going to come out. Although there is something at play there where the artist has to create a system that is large enough, that is flexible enough to produce 1,000 iterations that have the same aesthetic foundation, but are different and delightful enough to warrant that many. And it's a very interesting balance that needs to be, that's at play here. And so when we think about that, and now we have 1,000 of these artworks, each token is with a different collector. We're looking at them on a grid online. That is really like the way in which we experience it online. And now we're seeing the rise of digital galleries and things of that sort. But when you pull it out of the screen, what does that look like? And there are two different schools of thought between artists and the work when it comes into the physical form. There are some artists that say this is a digitally native artwork. I will produce as many prints as humanly possible. It doesn't matter. There are others that are trying to be very specific about how many they produce. I think we're getting close to time, but when it comes to pulling it out and displaying it, I think that's always a dialogue with the artist. And sometimes they'll take my recommendation of how I think it would best be displayed, but it's always a conversation.
Also, we could talk a little bit about this anonymous asset public collection and how this works as far as the forming of collections and also the gallery space, and how that's part of the community that you're building, how that's part of the culture that you're building. It's very different than, say, the traditional model, say it'd be private, it's not and also it'd have a way of how does this idea, how is the notion of public, changing the way we engage with art,
a lot. Oh, so much. So much. I mean, I think there are pros and cons to this. I think you tend to see now hordes of people go towards something that kind of tends to get a lot of traction, whether or not it's warranted or not. But I think at the same time, when we think about in terms of public, what's available, artists now have the opportunity to be extremely deliberate of what they want associated or attached to their artwork. It's not a piece of paper that might get lost. It's here, it's transacted. They have all the metadata, all the space to really make very abundantly clear how they want this artwork to be used, how they want it to be conserved, so on and so forth. And so, I think when it comes to the public side, also pricing, pricing is one of those things that it's a sensitive topic at times in the world of art in general. So, artists tend to get really nervous, making sure, oh, well, can this if I sell it at this price, can I get to this point? Or I have a floor price. I'm selling for this much, and someone wants to buy it for less. Should I do it? And so it does add these like different social components that I think have been really abstracted away, for better or for worse, in the art, with capital A, traditional art world. That we'll see how it kind of works out. There's no specific remedy for these types of things, and we'll figure it out.
Well, I do. I mean, I have lots of opinions about the pricing and ideas about value. I mean, as far as, is the public really creating the value? And this leads me to a question for Nadia. How do you select you have these, let's just focus on the ecosystem or projects, say, that are creating an ecosystem that can live, the DAO, right? The DAO projects are these structures that can live in different platforms fluidly. They take a team of people to produce, meaning the artist, say, is the concept, and then you have the intermediary, the producer, and then you have maybe the technologist that creates the kind of interface, also conceptual how to make the conceptual work, realize the conceptual work. And then all of a sudden you have this fractional ownership of the work, and this idea of like almost the artist's rights are taken away, and it's left, and it has its own way. It's an independent entity, a corporation, or this idea of entity, and the idea of property. And could you talk a little bit more about that structure, and how do you pick the artists? Do the artists submit like a concept that you think can be made, and what is the role of the producer in all this, in this new production platform?
Maybe I just start from how we select the artists. And of course, we initially Snark.art, we focused on the traditional artists, because we had this dream that we bring traditional artists and traditional collectors into crypto art world. And they will adopt, they will be very happy with that. And of course, we realized later on that is a pretty difficult shift for many artists to experiment with blockchain as the really like creative medium, because either that's one-of-one collections that we see now, but happening in an NFT world in a wide scale, and all like generative or digital artists that understand the medium, how to work with. So we took a role of those educators and mediators for traditional artists, and we still navigate and help artists to enter this space with our team, kind of like creating a description and steps of the let's say dynamic NFT collection. Now we are practicing this experiment with a couple new artists. I can't reveal you the names right now, but it will be like in a couple months we'll launch the new projects on og.art. And we have 3D graphic motion designers in-house, and it's like hand-to-hand work. Discuss narrative, discuss concept, discuss all mechanics, what behavior from the collectors we would like to encourage as well, because the generative and dynamic NFTs, they allow you to kind of create a certain behavior and encourage people to do certain things with NFTs, with their artworks. So it's up to the artist and up to the interest that probably nobody did it before, or something has been done before, and we like combine some. It's a creative process. So it's a very exciting work with artists that we like very much and enjoy very much. And then going to the next step, when the collection is launched, we have you can see in the digital, in the blockchain now, you can see very right away if the collection is really interesting for the community, or it's what is the response, right? If in the past the artist could get some response from the audience just after they launch and exhibit the artwork, now you could really bring community around the artwork much before its launch and find out what the community thinks, how they're excited about the artwork, and then you can even regulate the number of pieces that you would like to launch. So you're like market-wise, you can be market-wise as well, not just concept-wise and execution-wise, but market-wise as well. So not to produce not so many art pieces than market like not ready for probably. So, and we just actually with our OG Crystals project, we went through the process of voting because we have a DAO. We created a DAO around that project, and we put on a voting, gave rights to the community to decide if we would like, if they are open to change the name of OGCR that we used in all our social media to OG.art. So because they, as a collectors and the members of the community of the first artwork with Michael Ju and Daniil Krivoruchka, OG Crystals, they will automatically will become a part of the community for the next project that we will be launching soon as well.
And that's
so
interesting.
so that's a very exciting part when we collaborate and we decide, and it's a co-creative process.
Well, that's a different model, like say, than the traditional art world, like scanning the market for if it will be successful or not, by the community interest. I think that's a lot. And then that note, I guess I would like to ask there's a larger question, but I won't go too far because I don't think we have time to go into all the aspects of this very complicated new marketplace and extended landscape and ideas about value. But everybody kind of skirts around this idea of a new genre. Maybe each would like to talk, or what do they see this? I mean, do they see it as a stylistic under, digital art or new media? Do they see it as an extension of public art? Do you see it as a new generative as separate? I don't know.
I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I think generative art, the taxonomy of what's happening right now, it has yet to be properly defined. Although there are some scholars out there who have attempted. There's a really wonderful paper by Margaret Bowden. Definitely recommend checking it out. She talks about electric art and things of this sort. And I think right now we speak about generative art as this kind of all-encompassing thing, and digital art and computer art, and it's all kind of just thrown in, like lumped together. But there are distinctions out there. And I think it is up to us to all come together and try to figure out what we are going to call these things, because right now generative art is being used so willy-nilly all the time, and it's just not appropriate. I've tried to make an effort to at least specifically say, algorithmic art whenever I can. I just feel it's a little bit more descriptive, and making it very clear that there is an algorithm at play. There is an artist who had to write something to generate this artwork, and it is a subset of generative art. I think that we can see generative art as this umbrella term that includes any sort of artwork in which the artist relinquishes some sort of control to a system. And so those are my thoughts for the most part. I think taxonomy is going to be something that we really do need to hone in on and think about how we describe all the different practices. And these practices don't always hold the same visual feel to it. I think they have certain characteristics that are similar, in which long form generative art, they tend to, have multiple iterations of it, things of that sort. They tend to follow, because of the constraints with the computer. There are certain things that we start seeing over and over again, like flow fields, particle systems, rectangular subdivision, things of that sort. But still, I think, there are just different techniques at play. And so I think over time we'll start to suss it out a bit more.
That's and also I think it's wonderful that you have a dedicated space on in your platform for education about this subject, so people can visit Arctic's Code to look at your reading lists. Also, I guess I want to also, before anybody else talks about what they think the genre might be, like, because if we're talking about NFT culture, the NFT could be used to probably can NFT be used for almost maybe for mediums that were thought of as not as uncollectibles. Like I was thinking about how it's being used for performance art and film, except people using performative, doing performance and showing it, say, online, and then creating a video object through the NFT, and then that object is now collectible in the institution. So the NFT culture is it, before, like, thinking about the genre, but also thinking about it's more than just bridging how we're bridging into the traditional art market. It's more so how the medium is supporting, it is creating maybe what we could say property, right? Some tangible property. So again, I'll let the panelists go on about their ideas of what this genre might, where this might fall in the genre. Do you have any, Kevin and Jennifer?
NFT genre. An NFT, or it can be, can apply to anything, that can be, it's a metadata record, first and foremost, and that, so what can be defined through metadata, and that goes back to this kind of what I'm calling that kind of social believability, that kind of social buy-in, that it is legitimate, that it works, that it makes sense to people, and that's kind of social consensus process, and the reason, the huge difference from kind of these early days stories versus the NFT ecosystem that we all experienced over the past 2 years is the Ethereum's communities drive towards interoperability and standards, and so that took a lot of social coordination, a whole long process to come up with these forms and these standards all across the stack, and so that's the basis that the success of NFTs have had. That process is going to continue. There will be other standards around different types of property, so the extent to which things are just going to become more and more digital. Property in general is going to be, referenced by digital records more and more and more. And so that means that NFTs are going to be applicable to more and more things. So in that sense, they're not going away, even though we don't know what new forms that they're going to take. I think Sophia was just right on in terms of, our conversation about these terminologies, in an art sense, generative art and algorithmic art and these things. And, we alluded to earlier, as having been in the, in this world for a long time, just seeing this progression of terms and terminology of how to call things. And so that process, obviously is still happening. So there'll be, there'll be a day in which we'll just kind of roll our eyes and go, oh, generative art.
I know, it's such a broad term.
That's not the right term. And so that's going to just keep happening. And so, but I do think it's interesting, and again, like Sophia's pointing to kind of formalisms in, that are there in the works, it's like, oh, particle system, or these, kind of, other sorts of like, fundamental algorithms that are showing up in these works. And I think that is true. I think that's very much the case, that there are these at a formal level, a set of kind of norms that, or standards, or kind of, kind of things that people look to in making works. And so maybe that's one approach to this genre question is, kind of the formalisms that algorithms kind of bring forward.
Right. Yeah. And
And
Nadia, you
yes,
yes.
I'd like to echo Sophia and Kevin in this explanation, because we call personally our project and our new platform of dynamic NFTs, because that are part of generative art. So it's not like dynamic, it's just like dynamic generative artworks and NFTs. And what else could be developed there? I think there are many other possibilities we don't even probably imagine right now that could bring new interactivity between the artwork and the buyer or the creator, and as well as more personalized experiences, or like the possibility to influence and create and interact and evolve within artworks. So I think that there are still many segments that probably not discovered yet, but gamification is definitely will be more and more used and developed, used for in generative field or like NFT field. I don't know how we can like better to format. And for us, of course, the way that you mentioned before, that Kevin mentioned, like formalism. So in the beginning of NFT, not in the beginning, when the NFT became a hype, people started to say that there is an NFTism as a movement. But I'm like personally believe that there is no NFTism yet, because it's practically in a way that digital art, in internet art, and many artists that practiced quite a lot before, and the NFT is kind of like played with muscles that we built before, just like trying what is possible there. But generative art and dynamic NFTs that evolve gamification element and interactivity, there are big potential for creating new ism for art. I am not an art theorist, but I think pretty soon we will see some new terms and terminology will come around. Yeah. And it will be very interesting how we will call that pretty soon.
I would say that there's a kind of NFT, the rush of the NFT almost was like kind of like dating, like you put so much expectation on it that it couldn't live up to it. But I don't think that we've seen the full evolution of this currency or contract. And I do think that we're in the process of a major cultural shift where the creative process is an integral part of the discovery of the unseen, unknown, unseen, and possible.
And I'd like just to add, if I could, that I'm now at the Austin at the conference that it was like yesterday, the Central Conference. Today is Consensus, and a couple of weeks ago I was at VCon conference in Minneapolis, and where you can see and witness a mass adoption for NFTs. Mm-hmm. So we like from in the art world, we always like too much probably focused on the art world itself, but I believe that this mass adoption, even people they're buying NFTs as they first purchase some token or some like picture or pixels picture or static image, but as that interest could really become an entry point for many people to discover great art in the future and the full. So to educate themselves and join the wave that I believe we all develop here, that the quality art, the deep concept, the meaningful art message, and great execution of the project, that in a certain way that mass adopters, they could join and also enjoy the artworks that we create.
Great. I don't know if we have any questions from the public. I'm not.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a hi. It's Michael Reece. By the way, what a great panel! Thank you, people. And I'll tell you what's going on the chat is everybody keeps saying, "What a great panel! What a great panel! This is amazing." So people are really getting a lot out of your perspectives. I think I cleared up most of the questions that were brought up by just responding in the chat. But I have a question that I'd like to interject. You know, we saw the GameStop thing happen, and GameStop, of course, was a situation where there was a financial platform that was selling stocks and bonds. I think it was called Robinhood, if I'm not mistaken. And they basically drove the market way up, and then the market crashed. And a lot of people lost a lot of money, and there was all kinds of problems about that and all kinds of ethical issues. And part of it is that people felt that the algorithms were specifically designed, as they are on Facebook, as they are on Instagram, et cetera, to kind of manipulate people's behavior and get them buying more things, doing more things, risking things that they wouldn't risk because they were sort of in this game space, this gamification space, but that there were real consequences. And a couple of times you guys have mentioned wallets, and you've also mentioned that, you know, that though things that the collector does or is interested in or whatever, as evidenced in their wallet, could be a feature in any and make it into an interactive artwork or make it into a co-authored artwork. A couple things about that. First of all, the possibility of manipulation is intense, and I wonder if you guys have any observations about that. I know a lot of people are worried about that in the crypto space. And then the second thing is that if you're an artist that wants to author something, you know, the death of the author aside, if you're an artist that wants to author something, you know, how, you know, like you won't be able to participate in this fast moving, you know, roller coaster of an event. But anyway, if you could answer the first question, I know it's complicated, it's really hard. There are Bitcoin believers, Bitcoin haters, crypto haters, the bro haters, all that sort of stuff. But if you guys could address it a little bit, I think people want to hear your opinion, your approach to that.
I would love to touch on this. I think it's something that I see firsthand a lot when I speak to collectors that I know and so forth. So I think it's important to remember how blockchains came about as a financial system. And so you have a lot of people who enter the space very financially focused, or just, you know, the vernacular is there. You know, people talk very much in terms of the financial system. I used to work at JP Morgan. Thank God that I did, because now I understand what half these people are talking about. Honestly, I would have been lost without it. But, you know, I think there's this idea where I think the issue at hand when it comes to visual art or visual collectibles, as we'll say, is that there seems to be some confusion. So we have art that is there for the sake of being art. And especially when we have long form generative art projects where there are 1,000 of them and a bunch of people can interact, and then we trade to see if I can get my favorite one. But at the same time, you have the rise of profile picture projects, of these PFPs, and people screaming utility, utility, and they're trying to turn these things essentially into some sort of stock or commodity. And you want to buy this because you will get something in the end. And so there seems to be some confusion, I think, as a whole now, where people are coming in, they're buying these profile picture projects. There's all this hype around it, and people are, you know, buying it up, and then they're expecting the same thing to happen with art. And we saw this happen with art blocks just later of last year, the later half of the year, and people coming in and you know, who came from that side of the world. I think when art blocks first started, it was very much this like utopian world where all were like, generative art, we love it. It's $50 for this, 100, you know, it was just a lot of fun. And then this trader mentality started to enter. And so, you know, we see this time and time again. And I find myself having Twitter fingers, getting into fights with collectors who are complaining there has been no sales volume on this Art Blocks project for the last who knows how long. And you know, I'm like, good, you know, good. This is an art. This art shouldn't be traded. You know, it's not something that's going to 10x in 2 weeks. Like, you know, get real. But there is, you know, there is a side of this world that exists. And for me, you know, I'm just hoping that we can bring in more art-focused human beings and people who just genuinely love it to come in and be proper stewards for the artwork. And so, you know, I think it's important to just remember the dynamic that's at play, what's going on over here, and also know that there's a distinction. Like if you want to come and play around with trading, there is a place for that on the blockchain. They're PFPs, you know, these profile pictures, they're community driven, and people love to show like, I have this monkey and I have this, you know, whatever it may be, and there's a community around that. But on the art side, you know, it's just like, think a little bit more about it, you know, just buy art because you love it. Like it's as simple as that. If you need to sell it because of something, that's fine, sure. But to look at it as something to be traded like a stock is just, you know, you're gonna get burned because it's just not, that's not why you do it, you know. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Michael, for that insightful, clear question. So I think that we've touched on a lot of subjects and a lot of information that people can think about and explore further. I surely hope to continue this conversation and in both practice and also looking at the evolution of this medium and also the extended platform. So I thank each of you for joining me in this conversation. I thank you, Michael, for inviting me to collaborate with you on this topic of exploring the culture of NFTs. And have a good night.
Yeah, I just want to chime in for a moment. Almost everybody, I hope I've got all the links and everything accurately, but everybody and their websites and different projects that are involved in can be found if you follow my link tree on Instagram, or if you go to michaelreece.org and you click on the event page, which is, you know, projects and platforms exploring NFTs. So any more information, do you guys want to say Twitter handles or anything like that people could follow you at or find out more?
Yeah, sure.
So go ahead, please.
Oh, so my personal Twitter handler is Nadia_Taiga, and for snark.art and og.art is the same, like it's that should be spelled. So snark.art and og.art. So please join us, and I hope we could experiment more and find that inconceivable creature to guess.
Right.
You can find us at
Thank you.
Mccoy Space. That's our domain, our website, and my social handles.
Thank you. And so,
Well, my personal is, my personal is Sophia Garcia _IO, and then artxcode_IO on Twitter. I'm not too active on Instagram, so just Twitter's it. Go for it.
Great. Well, thanks again, everybody. What a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mhm.